I would like to return your minds back to the Ephesus church, and by way of reminder, we are at the point in which Paul, who is speaking to the church there, has just finished giving them a list of commands. But it's more than a command. These ways of thinking and behaviors are there so that the church there can put on the new self in the likeness of God and righteousness and holiness of truth. And there's a way to do that based on the commands. It's the how. And so you see before you what I looked into as an imitator. If you turn to chapter 5 of Ephesians, verse 1, chapter 5, verse 1. It says, "Therefore, be imitators of God as beloved children." So, we have a man, he's dressed like Elvis Presley. And he is imitating him because Elvis Presley is dead. And no, we have other imitators in this life. We have Michael Jackson imitators or impersonators. We have people that imitate people like Johnny Cash. We have people that imitate all types of people. The purpose behind their imitation is to remind people of their songs, and they imitate their character, and they imitate their mannerisms, their body language, all to keep the songs and the memories alive for this person that they think is significant to the world. And here we have in chapter 5, verse 1, "Therefore be imitators of God as beloved children." And so we need to think about what it takes to embody God. Like it said in the previous verses, that we are putting on the new self, which is in the likeness of God. But more than that, in the verses that we have before us in chapter 5, it gives us how to do that. Praise be to God that He doesn't leave us without the how, right? So we can have that understanding of what to do. So verse 2, it says, "And walk in love, just as Christ also loved you, and gave Himself up for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God as a fragrant aroma." So this walk is significant because it's not just how we walked into this building today. It's not just how we may walk to our cars after service today. The walk is a way of life. It's a lifestyle. It's what you do on a regular basis every day. You walk in love. You walk in love. You live in love. Your lifestyle is in that. It's positioned there. So, let us again focus in on the text to see something else. It says, "And walk in love, just as," so you can think of it as like, "just as Christ also loved you, and gave Himself up for us." So why do I have this emphasized? It is because of this idea of giving Himself up for us. Now I think in my case, I initially thought of this, and I still do, as Christ having gone to the cross, given up Himself, His physical body. as a sacrifice and an offering to God, which was pleasing to God. But ask yourselves this question. Is it just his physical body that he gave up? Or was it also his mind? Did he also give up himself in his will, what he wanted? I submit to you that not only did he give up his body, but he also gave up his mind. But then the next question you may ask is, well, then if he gave up his mind, what did he replace it with? Or whose will did he replace it with? And we will find that here in Luke chapter 22, verse 42. It says, Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done. This is the account of Jesus, our Master, in the Garden of Gethsemane. In the Garden of Gethsemane. And he was praying at this time before he was about to be delivered up to death. And he prayed, if you're willing, remove this cup. That's his prayer. But not my will, but yours. I see this as really summarizing the idea of what it took for him to give himself up, not only in body, but in mind. And that is how we are also to give ourselves up. We are to give up our own will for the Father's will, for Christ's will, just like Christ did. Christ never did anything that wasn't pleasing to God. Christ never did anything that the Father didn't want him to do. And so then, that submission of his will led him to give up his body also. So there's the connection. If we are to give ourselves up, we must give up our will, our mind. And if it leads to us giving up our bodies as well, then so be it. But we must give up ourselves as Christ did. Look with me now at chapter 4, verse 15. 4:15. Notice the emphasis on in love. We just talked about how we are to walk in love. And 4:15 here says, but speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in all aspects into him who is the head, even Christ. And also, notice the very next verse, verse 16. Notice the emphasis on in love. It says, causes the growth of the body for the building up of itself in love. Okay? Notice back to what we read. If we are to have that lifestyle to walk in love, we are to be built up in love. The people and we are to speak in love. You see the pattern. I want to submit to you this. Look at chapter 4, verses 2 and 3. It says, therefore I, the prisoner of the Lord, implore you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, showing tolerance for one another in love. Again, in love, being diligent to preserve the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace. So why did I just go over those few verses about in love, in love, in love, in love? Because this is an insight into how we can have unity. Everything is to be done in love. The walk is in love. Our speech is in love. We are to be built up in love. We are to be diligent to preserve the unity of the Spirit. So love is a key to our unity. It's a key to the unity of the Spirit that we have. And the how is clearly laid out in the text. The how is clearly laid out in the text. Let us move on. Returning back to Ephesians chapter 5, we'll look at verse 3. I have one word on the screen because it's a very significant word. This word, immorality, has the meaning of not just of doing what is right and what is wrong, or not doing what is right and what is wrong, but has the meaning of sexual immorality. Sexual immorality. Now, I want to give us an example of this from the Bible, in an account that we can read from Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 7, verse 6 through 27. A bit of a lengthy reading, but all Scripture is good and profitable for teaching. If you so choose, I have put it on the screen so that you can read with me, or you can read along in your own books. It says, "For at the window of my house I looked out through my lattice, and I saw among the naive, and discerned among the youths a young man lacking sense, passing through the streets near her corner, and he takes the way to her house. In the twilight, in the evening, in the middle of the night, and in the darkness, and beheld a woman comes to him, and behold, a woman comes to him, dressed as a harlot and cunning of heart. She is boisterous and rebellious. Her feet do not remain at home. She is now in the streets, now in the squares, and lurks by every corner. So she seizes him and kisses him, and with a brazen face she says to him, I was due to offer peace offerings. Today I have paid my vows, therefore I have come out to meet you, to seek your presence earnestly, and I have found you. I have spread my couch with coverings, with colored linens of Egypt. I have sprinkled my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us drink our fill of love until morning. Let us delight ourselves with caresses. For my husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. He has taken a bag of money with him. At the full moon he will come home. With her many persuasions she entices him. With her flattering lips she seduces him. Suddenly he follows her, as an ox goes to the slaughter, as one in fetters to the discipline of a fool, until an arrow pierces through his liver. As a bird hastens to the snare, so he does not know what it cost him, that it will cost him his life. Now therefore, my sons, listen to me, and pay attention to the words of my mouth. Do not let your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths. For many are the victims she cast down, and numerous are all her slain. Her house is the way to Sheol, descending to the chambers of death. A bit of a lengthy reading, but she was committing immorality, a sexual sin. She was willing to let that man be with her when she had a husband. That is what that word is talking about. That is wrong. Now, I will jump down back to chapter 5, and you will see the results of such a way. Chapter 5, verse 5. For this you know with certainty, that no immoral or impure person or covetous man who is an idolater has inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. It said that that man who went into the house with that woman who was being seduced, enticed, he did not know that it was going to cost him his life. Today, for us Christians, today, it too will cost us our eternal inheritance. It will cost us our eternal inheritance. And that behavior, as it says in verse 3, is not proper for saints. It's not proper for those who have been sanctified, for those who are holy, for those who have been set apart, and must not even be named among us. But the good thing is, if we walk in love, giving ourselves up, giving up our will like Christ did, then we can have that inheritance. If we put on the new self, which is in the likeness of God, in righteousness and holiness of truth, we can have that inheritance. So we have hope. But yet again, we must not have this named among us. And we must walk in love as we do so. So take this message, please. Take it as not my words, but the words of God. Receive it as such. Test the things that have been presented to you. Hold fast to that which is good. And let us all encourage, build each other up as we all strive to grow in love as we stand, as we say.